Oh, hi. Hi. I didn't know you could comment beforehand. Can y'all hear me? I did not plug up my microphone. Let me go turn off the air. Okay, cool. I hope it sounds really clear. Damn it, I forgot to plug up the microphone. God damn it. Because this is going on YouTube afterwards, but it's okay. All right, y'all. So since this is going on YouTube afterwards, I want to go ahead and jump right into it. So when people click on the video, they can just... Okay. Excuse me. For those of y'all that don't know, whenever I talk a lot, I start burping. Sorry, just a human, you know. All right, so let's get into it. Black people and Saturn. So y'all know I absolutely love Nikola Stojanovic. That is my favorite astrologer. He is a Serbian astrologer. He is the one who founded the degree theory. Y'all know when I'm like 9 degrees equals Sagittarius, 5 degrees is Leo, blah 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 blah. That was all him. He founded that. And so a long time ago, I was looking at his website and I was looking at his predictions from the 90s, like back when I was born. And he was talking about how the United States was eventually going to have a black president. How did he know the president was eventually going to be black? Because back in the 90s, nobody would have ever fucking thought, you know? But the reason why he knew that, I can't remember the specifics, but it was Saturn that told him that that the president was going to be black. How? Saturn represents the color black. I am wearing black today. Just because of that. But Saturn represents the color black. And even though we are obviously not black, I am brown, we call ourselves black people. Therefore, that puts us under the authority of Saturn. So the way things work in astrology is that every planet, everything, every item, every hair, glasses, the grass, the cars, the sky, everything has an astrological rulership by sign, planet, and house. For example, money. Money is ruled by Venus by planet, by sign it's ruled by Taurus, and by house it's ruled by the second house. You see what I'm saying? The same thing goes, for grass. Grass is also ruled by Taurus. It's a Taurian thing. Flowers is a Taurus thing. Clothes is a Taurus thing. Second house thing, right? Venusian thing, Venus thing. What's another one? Computers. My computer, my phone that's right in front of me, that's ruled by Aquarius, which is subsequently ruled by the 11th house, which is subsequently ruled by Uranus. Like everything in the world has an astrological association. I don't care what it is. You never have to ask me, Jade, can you use Hori? Can you use Astro to see this or see that? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Jade, does this mean, can you find this in astrology? Can you? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's all there. You just have to know how to find it. That's the trick, is knowing how to find it. I can't find everything. I'm not perfect. I'm not, super computer, super astrology. You know what I'm saying? So you just have to, that's why it's important for all of us to come together in a community, because what one person misses, the other person finds. And the more we can collectively come together and find all these different meanings, the better we can utilize astrology for ourselves and our clients. So, continuing on. So, the first thing, I've got like one, two, three, I've got like 11 different topics I want to talk about here as far as Saturn and how it represents black people. Now, one thing I want to address real quick is that a lot of people were like, I don't really like associating Saturn with black people. I don't know about that. And it's funny because I'm going to be so honest with y'all. Actually, a lot of non-black people were telling me that, I'm sorry, y'all, you don't get to decide. I'm sorry, you kind of don't get to be uncomfortable with that, because as a black person, I kind of got a little bit more authority over you, you know what I'm saying, because I'm black, you know what I'm saying. But that being said, it's okay to admit that black people represent those harsh, heavy Saturnian things. We do. And for those of y'all that haven't seen, this video is more specific to black people in America. It can apply to black people elsewhere. If you want it to, it can. If you feel it does, it can. But because I am only from America, I can't speak for other black experiences in the world. So it will be up to you to tell us if it applies for other people in the world. Because, I just know the culture is different, and I don't want to just group everybody. The black experience is different in different parts of the world. But anyway, so with that being said, the first thing about why Saturn rules black people. Saturn, like I said, it rules over the color. Well, actually, it doesn't rule over the color brown. Brown is more of a Plutonian color, but because we call ourselves black people, that puts us under Saturnian rulership because it rules the color black. So that's that name association. Something that has to be controlled. Oh, so Saturn represents things that need to be controlled. It represents something that needs structure, right? Or something that people feel needs structure, right? Kind of like when you think about a family unit, most times people feel like a family needs structure. The mom takes care of the house, the dad goes to work, the children stay in their place and be children, like that. When people feel like something needs to be locked into some sort of box, and Saturn actually does rule boxes. It rules cages and anything that is square in nature, right? So if you think back, what was it? I think fact check me on this, historians. 400 years ago, when slavery first started in America, I think. But the way people viewed us was that we needed to be boxed, caged, that we needed structure, things that we didn't actually need, but that's how we were viewed. That's that Saturnian influence. We were viewed as something that needed to be controlled, something that needed to be shackled, something that needed to be slowed down, something that needed to be blocked. Saturn represents things that are shackled and slowed down. Now, this doesn't mean that that's true. That's just the way in which we were viewed, right? So Saturn also rules over time. And I know y'all all know the saying, what is it? Black don't crack. And it really doesn't. And there's a real astrological representation for that. Because it's true. Like, it truly doesn't crack. Like, that's not just some random ass saying we all like to say. So Saturn represents time, and people who have a Saturnian influence on them. For example, even if you are not black and you are Capricorn rising, Capricorn, whatever, whatever, you will still age better than your peers because Saturn rules over time, right? So we age better with time. And so on the opposite end of that, no offense to anybody, I'm just, making the connection. No offense to anybody, but they say white people age like milk, and white people are ruled by the moon. The moon does rule over milk, and milk ages terribly. So that's literally where that connotation comes from, that connection. Like, it's so literal. It's so literal. Like, I'm so sorry. It's just very literal. But that's, like, that's where that comes from. I'm not saying it comes from astrology, but astrology shows it because the moon represents pale skin and milk. Also, another thing, those of y'all that don't know, there is a saying that goes with black people. If you're not black, make sure you don't go out. Make sure you don't go around saying this, please. But it's called colored people time, because people are always saying, well, black people are always late, they're terrible on time, or we do things on our own time. So it's called colored people time, CPT. That would also be a Saturnian theme. Saturn, like I said, it represents time, either good time management or bad time management. And the fact that we have the fact that our entire race has our own fucking time association, yeah, there it is right there. The colored people time. Number 3 would be strife and oppression. Saturn represents strife and oppression. So what does this mean? Because I know you guys might get kind of confused. Like, well, we all have Saturn in our birth charts, but we're not all oppressed in the same way, right? So if you want to look at your birth chart, Saturn in your birth chart would show where you face that strife, where you face that burden, where you feel that you are most oppressed, even if you might not actually be, you might actually be oppressed. But as it relates to racial oppression, the oppression of a people, that is a Saturnian thing affecting people who are under Saturnian rulership. So black people. That is the astrological representation for why they can't get anything done. They don't get married. They don't have jobs. Like, oh, they have it so rough. Poor souls. That's also Saturn represents the 10th house, which represents the public, like the public image and public figures. That's also why one reason why public figures love to go to Africa and the other third world countries and be with the little brown children, their poor souls, on the mission trips, because it looks good. It's that 10th house representation, that image, and because Saturn represents black people, it's like that image looks good with black people who are under strife. It makes them look good, like they're coming in to make a change, but y'all know how that goes. So yes, Saturn is a heavy planet. And when I say a heavy planet, I mean literally. Saturn represents things that actually are heavy. Like if you had a big ass rock in front of you, that's Saturn. It comes down hard. You know how people say, I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders? That's Saturn. Y'all know in the zodiac, not your natal chart, but the zodiac that goes from Aries all the way to Pisces, you know, at the top of that zodiac is Capricorn, right? Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. That's the weight of the world, the top of the world. That's where that saying comes from. So that's why being black, it can feel like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. And it's true. Like we really do a lot of the time. We really do more than most people. You know, beyond just the daily struggles that everybody goes through. I'm sorry, I can't talk. Beyond just the daily struggles that everybody goes through, when we walk out the door, when I walk out that door, I have to wonder what the fuck is going to happen to me because of the color of my skin. That's the weight of the fucking world, because I can't change it. There is nothing I can do about it. And that's just one. That's also another reason why it's very insensitive to say, oh, blue lives matter when you're talking about black lives matter, because blue lives, police officers, they can take off their uniform and go about being a citizen if they want to. I will always be black. I can't take off being black. It will always put me in danger. You know, as of right now, the current state of the world, I'm in danger just for the color of my skin. So that's where that weight of the world feeling comes from being black, stuff like that. Number four is burdens, which basically goes hand in hand with the strife and oppression. Black people, we do tend to go through more burdens than the average person. Like there's always something. There's a reason why we're blocked, or a reason why we can't do this or why we can't do that. Like for my academics in here, my academics in the room, if you've applied to many colleges or what have you, there's a really good chance that you've lost out on some type of scholarship or some other type of academic opportunity because you were black. You know, like that's a burden for you. A lot of times black people have to take on the burdens of their family members. We have to be the breadwinners. And, you know, Saturn being at the top of the zodiac, you know, representing careers and whatnot, also shows breadwinning. And so you would think that by that logic, that black people would be like breadwinners, like, you know, like, yeah, baby, you know what I'm saying, over everybody. But no, because Saturn is also burden and strife, and because Saturn is also time, it takes us a long time and a lot of blocks, a lot of burdens typically to get to that breadwinner status, right? And in the midst of doing so, we're usually carrying the weight of the world. So a lot of times black people usually carry their entire families on their back, just their back, their back, that one person. Y'all understand what I'm saying? And so Saturn also represents authority, right? And that's why we tend to have, well, I'm not going to say we have problems with authority. I'm going to say authority has problems with us. I cannot explain to y'all how many times in high school and when I was younger, the black kids, they could do just so little. They wouldn't even do anything some of the time, or if they did do something, it wasn't that bad to justify the consequences. But the punishments that would come down from the authority members, Saturn also represents punishments. So black people have harsher punishments from authorities. You know, the law, the police, the judge. That's a Saturnian thing. That is authority. It represents punishment, and because we are under Saturn's rulership, we get that harsh punishment. There are so many black men right now incarcerated for selling little ass things of weed, little itty bitty ass things of weed. There are 4 dispensaries right around my house right now. People who, and none of those people are black. They're not. They're white people. They're selling weed, you know, all good and dilly dilly. But up until this point, you have to think about all the black people who had, you know, who had to suffer the consequences of the same little bitty weed that they're selling now. You know, weed doesn't do anything to anybody. Never has. Otherwise, it wouldn't be legal. You know what I'm saying? So that goes back to the strive, to the oppression, but more so with the authority members are always passing down harsher sentences, harsher punishments. That goes for in school, that goes for at the workplace. If you do something, your boss, or if your teammate does something at work, if you're black, it's a very good chance your boss is more likely to blame you for the mistake, you know. Saturn is also about expectations, so we are always expected to perform. We're expected to perform at a high level. It's like, it's so weird because we're expected to do the most, perform at a high level, but at the same time, when we actually do it, it's still not enough. Think about people you know with first house Saturn, or if you're a first house Saturn person, this is just an example. You know, first house Saturn people in general, they usually feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. This isn't enough. Like, I can't pat myself on the back. That's how black people feel and get treated all the time. We actually do enough. You actually do enough, and you don't get the reward you deserve, or you don't give yourself the reward you deserve. And that's what happens to us every single day. It's the same concept. It doesn't mean that you're going through something as severe as black people as a collective. I'm just using the example. And that goes into number 6, which is working twice as hard to get anywhere. If you've never heard that saying, then you're not listening close enough. Black people always have to work twice as hard to get anywhere, especially in America. We always have to put in twice the amount of effort. I think Bloomingdale or Bloomingdale, no, not Bloomingdale, Bloomberg reports, some type of journalist publication. They did a series of tweets just the other day where they surveyed white men, white women, black men, and black women to see the differences in their opportunities in the workplace. And the evidence was clear. The black women especially, but the black men too, were denied the most opportunities, even though they had the same qualifications, or they weren't allowed at certain meetings, or if they were at a meeting, there would be things discussed after they had left, different stuff like that. Working twice as hard to get anywhere. They had to put in all this extra effort and still not get recognized. And like, y'all, how do I explain this? Me talking about this, I understand that I understand that if you're not black, it can be hard for you to see this. You see Beyonce, you saw Michael Jackson, you see Michael Jordan, you see all that, LeBron James, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like they're doing good. Like they're at the top of the food chain, you know what I'm saying? And that doesn't describe, those are the exceptions. That doesn't describe the everyday black experience. We still have to work 3 times as hard just to get anywhere, just to take one step. Saturn is about blockages. We're oftentimes blocked at every step. If Saturn is a heavy boulder is a type of blockage, right? And so if you're going to move a heavy boulder out of your way, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get it the fuck out the way, because it's a boulder. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Also, Saturn represents adults. It represents grown people. And so people in the black community, black people, y'all know how we do our children a lot of the time. Oftentimes in the black community, we can see our children as grown before they are actually grown. We just, a lot of times, this is something that needs to be discussed between us. So, but we can have our children, and then when they get old enough, I don't know, to make their own sandwich, sometimes we can just be like, oh, they can handle it all, like we just throw on these adult qualities to them, especially with black women, well, black men too, but with black women, we can be little girls and we can have on some simple shorts, simple shirt. Like I don't have on a bra right now. If I were to be like 12 or something, there might be some old school black grandmother or grandfather out there who's like, you trying to be too grown, you trying to be grown, or since you want to be grown so much, or there have been all those instances. This is where that energy comes from. Y'all know, like in those movies where you got the little girl being a little girl, and there's that fucking sicko living in the house, and he's like, oh yeah, I like her, and the mom's like, oh, you tried to take my man, and the girl's like fucking like what, 15, like that bullshit. That's that Saturnian influence, that pushing those grown ideas onto people who are not grown. And then as it relates to black boys, Tamir Rice, for example, was gunned down, treated like a damn grown man, like a threat. A child was gunned down like a grown ass, threatening ass motherfucker, and he wasn't, and he died. That was that Saturnian influence, treating him like he was grown, seeing him as he was grown. Black kids often I'm not going to say we lose our innocence, but we lose our innocence in the eyes of other people. They don't see us as children when we are children. They don't see us as women when we are women. You know how black women are always seen as very, she can handle it. She's strong. She's tough. She's mighty. No. Moving on. But going into number eight is about high honors. So Saturn being at the top of the chart does represent high honors. And I would go as far as to say that the people who have the highest honors in the world right now, majority are black. The first that comes to mind is Beyonce, most definitely the highest honored musician in the world right now. When Michael Jackson was alive, it was him. LeBron James, highest honored basketball player. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Tiger Woods, highest honored golfer. Serena Williams, highest honored tennis player. Who else? Musician. No, I did musicians. I can't really think of anything else. If y'all have comments, I actually can't see the comments. If y'all, I don't know, the comments are kind of fucked up, I think. But anyway, but so black people, we often do well nowadays because it took so long. Because remember, I said that Saturn represents time, so it took us a long ass fucking time to get here. But now that we are here, you will continually see more black people having those very, 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 very high and prestigious honors, more so than we have in the past because it has been so long. That's that Saturnian influence. And then number 9 is about Aquarius in black people. So y'all know that Saturn does not only represent Capricorn, but it represents Aquarius. So remember how I said that Saturn represents things that need to be contained or caged, and how Aquarius represents groups, any type of group. If you have maybe 3 or 4 more people, that is considered a group. So this is why, groups of black people are seen as, oh, we got to cage them in, we got to lock them in, we got to put them somewhere. And in my mind, this goes back in the Dizay, when the United States was, way after slavery was abolished. But like black people, we weren't allowed to be in the nice areas of town. We weren't allowed to have property or be given nice homes in the decent areas. We were caged. We were, our groups were put into the ghetto. Saturn does represent a ghetto, by the way. We were put into ghettos and rundown areas. And then when it was time to, if we did have a decent area, when it was time to work on it, fix the house, mow the lawn, put taxes into that area, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. That keeps us in the cage. You see what I'm saying? That keeps us over here in our box and other people out there free in their box or whatever, outside of their box. Aquarius also represents popularity, right? And so because Saturn has rulership over Aquarius, this is why, in my opinion, black people are just so very popular. We're just very popular. No doubt. Like, oh my gosh, everybody talks like us, everybody acts like us, everybody has our hair, everybody has our bodies, minus all of the previous things I mentioned about the strife and the oppression. They get to just, be free. Aquarius represents freedom. So other people take on the freedom, of looking and acting black, but not actually being black. You see what I'm saying? This is also why, and I noticed this like last year, if you go to a club or something, me and my homegirl were there, and we went to this club for the first time, and we were like one of like 7 black people in the club. And living in the South, that can be a little intimidating, kind of just like, it's just kind of, it's weird down here. But we noticed how the white people, it was, even though it was only like a group of like maybe 6 of them, they were out there, they were dancing, having a good time. And then me and her, we were like, yeah, black people, we got to have a big ass group before we go out there and dance and shit. And I was thinking in my head, like, why the fuck is that? And I thought about it. I get it. So, like I said earlier, how white people are ruled by the moon. The moon represents personal connections. Not like a Libra where it's 1-to-1, but it's just personal and intimate setting, right? So if you got 6 people on the dance floor, that's pretty intimate. And then Aquarius represents groups, large groups, and since we are represented by Aquarius as well, to the extent, that's why when black people go to the club, we like to have large groups, large dance floors. It's going to be a lot of us, so we're going to get out there and dance. That's usually how it goes. That one was a little bit more lighthearted. Okay, and so another thing I wanted to talk about. So y'all know how Capricorn is represented by Saturn, right? And then you have Leo, which is inconjunct from Capricorn, right? In the zodiac, the 10th house and the 5th house are inconjunct. Leo and Capricorn are inconjunct. What is an inconjunct? The inconjunct aspect is like when you're building a puzzle, you're trying to put a puzzle together, and the puzzle pieces do not fit. When you're trying, you're like, oh, doesn't this go here? It looks like it goes here, and you're trying to make it fit, but it doesn't. Inconjunct aspect, that's how it works. It's also known as a quinsux, right? So Leo and Capricorn are inconjunct. They do not fit. So what Leo qualities do not fit with Capricorn qualities? Well, I'll tell you. So, black people, we're always getting called lazy. Everybody deserves a break. Everybody deserves the time to sit down and chill. When black people do it, we get called lazy. Why is that? Because Leo in the 5th house represents leisure time. It does represent, having the time, taking the time to be lazy, to relax, leisure time. Y'all know how Leo represents lions, and lions and cats are very lazy. They like to lounge. It's the same concept. But when we do it, we're being told, oh, you're sitting on your ass. You're not doing shit. We always always got to be working twice as hard. We can't even fucking relax. Like, that's how it goes. Um, and then, oh, Oh, you know what? Also, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about our children being perceived as grown and, by ourselves and by other people, and, taking away our innocence. Leo represents children, Capricorn represents adults, and, children and adults do not fit in the same puzzle piece. Children do not do adult things, and adults normally don't do childish things, right? So that's another reason why that inconjunct happens, why that puzzle piece doesn't seem to fit when it comes to us having children and seeing them as adults versus not seeing them as adults, or other people doing the same stuff like that. Or also, by that same logic, a lot of times black children, we have to grow up very quickly. We have to grow up fast. We have to figure out what the world is right now. Many millions of black families are having to have a discussion with their young sons about what the fuck to do if they see a police officer, if a police officer approaches them. That's not right. We shouldn't have to do that. We always have to grow up fast like that, like stuff like that. That's just one of many examples. Oftentimes, in black families more so than others, when a black person turns, maybe 16, 15, 17, they might have to go and get a job and help with the bills. Basically a child, somebody who should be enjoying their teenage years, has to go out, work. Saturn represents that hard work. There's that burden again to help with the bills and stuff like that. Saturn does also represent bills, because that's like a responsibility. Saturn represents responsibility, so we have to take on more responsibilities, like I said earlier, for our families and stuff. That goes back to it, not being able to enjoy childhood all the way, because even when you're a teenager, you're still childish as hell. If you are black, then you've probably heard the phrase get it out the mud. I don't think anybody else really says that. To get something out the mud, that basically means you have to work for it, put your hands in the dirt. You have to get down in dirty mud on your face, blood, sweat, and tears. And that's why a lot of us have that get it out the mud mentality, that Saturnian influence. Saturn represents mud, because mud is it's brown, it's heavy, you can usually get stuck in it. Saturn represents blockages, so to be stuck is a blockage. So that's where that get it out the mud comes from. That's also one reason why black people among our community, y'all know how you got the black people who did have to get it out the mud, and you got the ones whose parents are way older. Again, that's that Saturnian influence with time. Normally the ones with older parents grow up somewhat more established in the world. They have more privilege than the other black people. And so other black people might call them, oh, you spoon fed, you got the silver spoon, you didn't get it out the mud, you didn't do the hard work I did. And that goes back to that Saturnian influence. Saturn, the 10th house Capricorn, is all about recognition. So a lot of times within our community, talking to black people here too, like when our community, y'all know how people want recognition for having to work so hard where they shouldn't have had to have done that. See what I'm saying? And then one thing that I noticed too, with Leo and Capricorn being inconjunct. So Leo represents hobbies, right? It represents the hobbies. Astrology was once my hobby. I play Pokemon. I like makeup. I like hair, stuff like that. But a lot of times when it comes to for us, in my experience, from what I'm seeing, we don't typically branch out with other hobbies. The black people that do can usually be seen as weird or somewhat ostracized. That's that Aquarian influence. Remember, we also take some of that Aquarian influence. So whenever Aqua is opposite from Leo. Leo represents your talents and your hobbies, and Aqua represents the talents and hobbies you share with the world, like something that usually becomes like a skill you get recognized for, stuff like that. So when black people, when we branch, y'all know, when we branch out, like from hair or makeup, if you're a girl and you branch out from hair or makeup, or from being a mother 24/7, or something like that, or from cooking, and if you're a black man and you branch out from basketball, football, or being a barber, or really being in the clothes and stuff like that, usually you can just be looked at very strangely, very weird, right? Like, a lot of times our hobbies, Leo, are limited. Capricorn, that's that inconjunct. We tend to have limited hobbies. But one thing I was thinking about, I was like, okay, so by that same logic, if we expand our hobbies, we'll have more success, because Capricorn Saturn 10th house represents success. And then, so if we have more hobbies, we will have more success. Because I feel like, I was thinking about myself in Astro. I'm like, it's just crazy that I'm even, so successful with this. Most black people don't do this. They don't think about this. How did I get here? And I really think it's because I've always been somebody who has allowed myself to branch into other hobbies, have many different hobbies. Everybody knows I love Pokemon, Sun and Moon. I do all this other weird shit. Well, it's considered weird for other people in astrology. It's definitely considered weird. And I happen to have success with it. And then me using the Sailor Moon intros on my video and the little Sailor Moon graphic, Sailor Moon type, that anime type graphic, not to say that most black girls aren't into anime. Well, actually, they're not most of them, but like, the more I branch out, the more success I have. So I think if you are black, I would definitely recommend branching out on those hobbies. Go find that weird ass, oddball ass hobby. And it doesn't even have to be weird, but if nobody else is doing it around you and you like it, you should be doing it. Especially if it's something that you want to turn into a career. And then, so I want to get into derivative astrology real quick. So for those of y'all that don't know, derivative astrology is basically when you count. It's like you turn the natal chart. So back in the old days, they used to physically turn the natal chart around and around and around until they got to the place they wanted to be. But nowadays, we just count because we don't have physical natal charts in front of us, right? So basically, you can count houses from houses to see what's going on in even deeper parts of life. For example, y'all know how the fourth house traditionally represents the mother. This is an example. Fourth house is traditionally the mother, right? Right. The sixth house is traditionally jobs. It represents your job in a natal chart, So with the sixth house representing jobs and the fourth house being the mother, if you go to your fourth house, my fourth house is in Aquarius. And if you start from the fourth house and you count 6 spaces, because sixth house is jobs, so 6 spaces, you can see your mother's job. So in my chart, with Aquarius being in my fourth house, now my chart isn't linear because I have a late degree rising. So, but if I start with Aquarius, so count from the fourth, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's six houses. So the ninth house, my ninth house is in Gemini. My mother was a teacher. Gemini represents learning, the learning environment, the classroom. So that's how derivative astrology works. So by that same logic, if black people are represented by Saturn and Capricorn, and if we look at the next sign over, which is Aquarius, so that will be the second house of Capricorn. Aquarius represents separations. The second house represents our finances. And oftentimes in black families, there is a lot of separation with our families, with our significant others and everything like that because of finances. This is why money is usually such a big deal to us as well. And also the second house represents your values and stuff. So like money is just even more valuable to us as a people than it is for other people. This is why, if you get on Facebook, you will see like black people will be very passionate about finances, how other people spend their finances. It's just a very, very big issue, and it really sets you apart. I know with white people, I can't be sure about other cultures, but with white people, one having money and the other not having money, it doesn't always set them apart to the extreme that it does for black people. Like earlier, I saw somebody post on Facebook. She was like, I'm not finna argue with no motherfucker who got to save up for a trip to Dallas. And she was saying, like, she's not going to argue with anybody who has to save money to take a trip. Like it's just very sad and divisive. But that's the mentality that a lot of the younger minds especially have, and even the older minds sometimes too. That's why it's always like, oh, you can't argue with me, get your money up. Other people don't even do that. But that's like one of our arguing points, I'm rich, can't talk to you, it's like that. But that's one reason why money is has so much more value to us than it does to other people. Also, so because we are also somewhat represented by Aquarius, right? Aquarius, like I said, represents separations, represents friendships, connections. Aquarius is opposite from Leo. Leo represents romance, dating, boyfriends and girlfriends. There's that opposition. When two things are opposite, they are basically butting heads. So because we have that Aquarian influence on us as well, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Aquarius is opposite from Leo. This is why, in my opinion, so many of us black people, we have problems and trouble with romance and relationships, with love. It also shows where that, black people, they don't have a father. That's where that stereotype comes from. Saturn traditionally represents the father. Saturn represents Aquarius. Aquarius is opposite from Leo, which represents children. So there is an opposition between the father and the child. Aquarius represents separation. That opposition is caused by the separation of the father from the child. So that's where that stereotype comes from. Like, that's where it's shown astrologically. But also, that's why a lot of times, we do have trouble with romance and relationships. There's always a block or a restriction. There's always a lot of chaos going on. It's always like buzzing. It's often difficult for us to just date peacefully, especially in smaller towns, because Aquarius represents community. So in the smaller communities, especially, that's a big issue. It was something else I wanted to say. Oh yes, now, and then with the moon being representing white people, and the moon being Cancer, which represents family and intimacy. That's why, and the moon is also the fastest planet. This is why you see white people have families so much faster. They get married quicker. It's easier for them to date and just go from this person to that person to that person. Whereas for black people, for us, if we're in a relationship, oftentimes we might not get into another one like until 2 years later, and with many people in between or whatever. But it's like it's more difficult. There's a restriction there. There's a constraint. Okay, y'all, I am not seeing any comments. I haven't seen a comment in like 30 minutes, but I just kept talking because this is going on YouTube. I'm not sure why. Oh, I can see it now. Okay, I can see it now. I can see it. I pressed the button. Do y'all have any questions? Are there any questions that I can answer? Is there also, was there anything you were confused about? Because since the comments weren't working, I couldn't see it, but now I can see it. Somebody said, since Saturn is blockages, is that why they say once you go black, you never go back? Yep, there it goes. Like every single stereotype in the world, like it comes, like it's represented astrologically. Stereotypes do tend to have some truth in them, most of them, not all of them, but they will be represented astrologically no matter what the stereotype is. Somebody said they're confused on the father-children relationship. Okay, so Saturn, traditionally, in traditional astrology, Saturn represents the father, right? Saturn has rulership over Aquarius, right? Because Saturn rules over Aquarius and Capricorn, right? And because we are black, because we are under the influence of Saturn, we are represented by mostly Capricorn, and to an extent, a lot, really a great extent, but also Aquarius, right? So Aquarius represents separations. It is opposite from Leo. Aquarius and Leo are opposite signs. When something is in opposition, that means they are opposing each other. If you and me are opposing each other, we're not really getting along, right? Right. Leo represents children. So if Saturn is traditionally black people, and Saturn represents the father, and then Saturn rules over Aquarius, which represents separations, which is opposite from Leo, which represents children. It shows how that's where that stereotype comes from. That's that energy shown astrologically of many black fathers being separate from their children. What flavor is the Capri Sun? Girl, it is Pacific Cooler. Can I repeat what I said about mothers finding a job? Yes, I will. Would being ruled by Saturn make these topics intensified? Remember how I said at the very beginning that Saturn is about things that need to be caged or put in a box or restricted, blocked, controlled. That's why these topics, that's why Black Lives Matter, that's why people, they get offended when you talk about it. Oh no, don't talk about that. Oh no, don't do that here. You can have your beliefs, but no, please don't talk about how Black Lives matter and deserve to live right here. There's that restriction, that blockage. So you're right. Did I talk about Mars and our fighting spirit? Capricorn is square to Aries. The cardinal signs all square each other. So that's where that comes from. That's why. Well, actually, but see, I can't really use that one though because Cancer and the moon is also square Aries. So that one I'm actually not sure. I'll have to think more. Unless, wait a minute, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Because Aries is 10th from Cancer. We're 10th. Aries is 10th from Cancer, but it's 4th from Capricorn. I don't have the words. I have to think about it. It'll come to me in the shower or something. How can we as a community use this knowledge on our relation to Saturn to change some of the negative perceptions? That's one thing I wanted to talk about. I had something in mind earlier, but I can't remember what it was. Let me remember what it was. How can we as a community use our knowledge on the relation of Saturn to change the perception? The only answer I really have, because everything I just explained the why and, the why. So as more and more people come into astrology, like every day there are more and more people saying, can you teach me how to read zodiac signs? You know what I'm saying? Please. Like the more and more that happens, the more and more we can refer to this video or y'all's own tweets, because I know y'all talk about it later, and explain to people, well, this is why this is how this is shown in the world. This is why that's shown in the world. And so like if I was white and I watched this video, and I watched the part about working twice as hard and stuff like that. Like that would have opened my fucking eyes. Like I would have been like, oh, they do got it rough. Goddamn. Well, goddamn it. You know what I'm saying? That's what I would have said. So I think using, the best, I'm an astrologer, so the best I can do is to use astrology. So my answer would be to, if somebody is willing to listen to astrology, to be able to explain the astrological information to them. There's a better way to say that. I had it in my head earlier. I can't remember what it was. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I keep having to go back up in the comments. Somebody asked me to explain derivative, and I will explain that again in a second. Why is it that Black women have a higher mortality rate for their children? That goes back to that same thing that I said about the fathers and stuff like that. I'm not saying it has to do with the fathers, but Saturn is the traditional ruler of death and mortality, right? And so Aquarius being separations and Leo being children shows the mother being separated from the children through death. And because the mother has the children, it's usually through childbirth, right? And then also because white people are ruled by the moon is the natural representation of pregnancy, right? The moon in Cancer is pregnancy, not the actual child, but pregnancy, right? So this is why whenever white women are pregnant, they usually, typically, most of the time they have very easy time, like the 19 kids and counting woman rather, shout out those kids, like pregnancy just comes very natural and easy to them. Whereas with Black women, also with Aquarius being inconjunct from Cancer, meaning they don't fit, and with Capricorn being opposite from Cancer, meaning they are at odds. That's why we can often have a lot of trouble getting pregnant, or when we're in the hospital. That's where that mortality issue comes from. It's like that. So it's by that same logic. I know you talk about Capricorn karma. Would this apply to us since we are Saturn ruled? I would definitely say yes. Because you got to think about it. You think about the 400 years of slavery and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know, like those slave owners and stuff like that, and in the Jim Crow era, like nothing happened to those people. They didn't really get any karma, not from what I can see. They just got to live. And then when we make mistakes, we get punished. Wrong place, wrong time. It's over with for you, baby. You ain't never coming back. We go through. But because Saturn is time, I do believe that with even more time, we will reach that point where, those types of things won't even be big issues anymore. So does Saturn represent black people just because of its harsh characteristics? No, I did mention how I didn't mention earlier about black people in time. Saturn likes to reward. Saturn rewards hard work. It rewards patience in long periods of time. And so with patience in long periods of time, we eventually had a black president. We got people like Beyonce. We got black people, getting recognition nowadays, getting accolades, 30 years ago, black people having all this popularity was just, unheard of. And eventually we will become the authority of the world. And that's so funny because I've heard plenty of times people say, oh, white people are scared because we're outnumbering them. They don't want us to take over. And I didn't used to believe that, because I would just be like, what? I just didn't get it. But now that I think about it from the astrological perspective, in time, that's what's going to happen. In time, and when I say time, I mean time. The name of my favorite astrologer is Nicholas Dejanovic. I'm sorry I was late on that. Rachel Cook, you'll have to watch the video from the start because I just went through like a lot of talking points. How would minor aspects like a quintiles and biquintiles, whenever I look into them, I always have to relook up the definition because it's hard for me to memorize them by heart. It's hard for me to interpret them. I thought I made a tweet about this the other day, but I can't remember if I did. So I can't tell you off the top of my head because I don't normally work with them as often. So I don't know the interpretations for them off the top of my head. And then oftentimes astrologers offer many, many, many different theories for what they mean, what they represent. They all kind of convolute, so I won't be able to tell you. I'm sorry. Oh, that's a good talking point. Somebody said, where Saturn is in the natal chart, is that where the black native struggles the most? I could see that because, me being black, Saturn is in my sixth house. The sixth house is your work environment. And on Twitter, I suffered through a lot of shit. I had to go through a lot of oppression because I was black in my work environment. Everywhere else in my life, it's pretty much good. I mean, sometimes I have those instances where, like I can tell somebody would have did something differently if I would have been a different color. But, nothing that's just really affecting my overall life. But that shit that used to happen on Twitter, that was a lot of big shit. So I would definitely agree with you on that one, that Saturn in the chart of a black person can show where they will struggle most with, like where they will face that oppression for being black, whatever house Saturn is in, and the sign. I can see that. And then my Saturn is in Aries, and people would just be like really angry at me. And they'd be like, oh, no, it's not because she's black, but there was nobody else. Will we reap rewards? Yes. We reap rewards with the more hard work, the more time we do reap rewards. That's why, like in rap music, I know some people. I think really just black people. Some other black people, we can, well, not we, but they get tired. They're like, oh, we get it. You niggas got it out the mud. We get it. Y'all slept on the floor. Like, okay, just be happy, nigga. Be happy with your money. Like, and they just be like, we get it, because it seems like every black male rapper has the same story. They slip on the floor, they rob and they stole so they could get food for their families, and now they are where they are and they're really happy. But There's a reason for that. That's that Saturnian influence. That's that getting it out the mud. With all that hard work, you do reap rewards. And I said that to say, like, with that hard work, you will reap the reward no matter how bad it is, no matter how heavy that rock is. And if you are black and you feel like you're not reaping rewards, you just got to wait for that time. That time. Saturn is time. It's going to take time. If you haven't seen it yet, you just got to wait on the time. If it's retrograde, it's the same thing. Somebody said Saturn in the fourth house and Scorpio get the most oppression from their family or their mother. If you're black, it wouldn't be necessarily your family, but rather I would say other people's families can oppress you because you're black. For example, my best friend has a Capricorn fourth house, and her most racist experience were other people's families. There were two experiences specifically. She lived next to a white girl we were friends with. She went to the white girl's house one day. They were like 7, and the white girl's mom saw she was over there. Then my black friend was over there, and she just kind of freaked out, and she was like, y'all come out the room, and just come out the room, like. And she said they just stood there, and the mother and the grandma couldn't tell them why they had to come out the room. It was really awkward. And then she was like, okay, y'all come back in. Y'all go outside. Don't come back in. Y'all just stay outside. But, you know. And then when she was younger, she had a crush on this white boy, and he liked her back. And he went home and told his parents, I like a girl. And they were like, is she black or white? They must have asked him, because he was like, she's black or she's brown. Something he said. Because when he came back to school the next day, he said, my mom said that we can't be friends because you're black, or like, my mom said I can't date you. My mom said I can't like a black girl. That's what it was. So she, having the Capricorn fourth house, her experiences with racism have been related directly to people's families. So I wouldn't say that it would be your family, but rather somebody else's. Or maybe just it has something to do with family, but I doubt if it will be yours if you're black. Now, if you're mixed and you live with your white family or something like that, or your non-black family, then yes, that would count. Why do I think astrologically white people consume black culture so openly and then deny it? That's a good question. That's a good question. Gemini, Taurus. I would say it goes back to that Aquarius, which represents things that are popular and trendy, and Cancer, disconnect. That Aqua Cancer disconnect. They want it and they use it, but they deny it and act like they're not doing it. That's that Inconjunct, that disconnect. That's where I think that comes from. Ooh, that makes sense. Saturn was the god of agriculture. So do you think the stereotype of us liking chicken, besides the scraps that the slave master used to give for, wait, besides the scraps that the slave master used for give us, comes from him? That would make sense, because when chickens, I know agriculture is farming, and usually farms involve chickens, so that would make sense where that stereotype comes from about liking chicken and watermelon and all these, like farm foods. All right, guys, I'm gonna end it here. Um, if y'all want to later on, I can get on live, but this one I'm going to end now because YouTube will automatically upload it. I want it to be uploaded because I'm going to post it on Twitter. But the next, and then we can get on live after this, and then that one I'll just delete after. I'm not going to put that one on YouTube, but I really appreciate you for being here. I really hope you learned something. I hope I made a lot of sense. I hope I put some things into perspective. And I was trying to speak in a way like, I tried to speak in a way where people who aren't black would understand, while also not sounding like I'm being offensive to my own culture. Because, I kind of had to, like, I was going back and forth the whole time. So I really hope I made a lot of sense, honestly. And I hope that you can use this in your, in your daily life. I hope you can make more connections. And to answer that question again, when y'all were like, well, how can we use this in real life and as a society to help us more? Besides just teaching people the astrology of it, there's definitely another way. Besides time and waiting and patience, there's another way, but I'll have to put more effort into Saturn to figure out what that is. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you had a good time.